Vice Chancellor of Abia State University is also in attendance. Professor Onyemachi and the Vice Chancellor, Michael Okpara University, also here with us. Every representative of the I want in great details to appreciate the Provost of the College of Medicine, Provost of the School of Postgraduate Studies, Deans of Faculty, Directors of Institutes and Centers, Heads, Academic and Administrative Units, distinguished professors and members of the University Senate, and other senior academics and members of the university staff here present, the alumni and friends of the University of Nigeria here present, and most importantly, you all, ladies and gentlemen, members of the fourth estate of the realm, ladies and gentlemen, you are all gladly welcome. I'll come back so very much onto the microphone with more names and recognitions. Some of us are already here sitting. Please take at this point to invite the microphone back to the German Senior Ceremonials Committee, Professor B.C. Wang, who will do the honors of the rest of the program. Professor Wang.
Next, it's my pleasure to invite to give the opening remarks and questions of the lecture, our chairman, who ordinarily would require no introduction, Professor Elichu Amuchas. An applause for Well, you can imagine what he's doing, give the handshake to the second vice chancellor. The star guest of the day.
Okay, like if you go back at negative, I was wondering whether it's a left-handed or this hand. I was almost thinking this is left hand. The light needs to be. The light on.
The representative of the power of the Igbo State, His Excellency, the Governor of Abia State, and his cabinet, our distinguished former Vice Chancellor, I say all protocols observed. It is a great pleasure. I welcome you all. This very important occasion. I single out the Vice Chancellor, his cabinet, for a tribute. They are not very well to sustain this legacy, and we congratulate them. The University of Nigeria was established in 1960. That is 63 years ago. And we give honor to whom honor is due. I'm not the lecturer, and as the chairman, I have only a few remarks to make. The great tribute gives to the founding father of the university, he left two very important legacies to us. political and educational structures of this country. And till today, we are still trying to sustain them. The political legacy started in 1938 when Zik, as Dr. Nnamdi was popularly known, stepped forward to define Nigerian personality. They backed against him in the election that took place instead of annexing his kinsman from the east. He tried to say that we are all Nigerians, no matter your clan or ethnic group. From there, until 1960, in spite of motions from within those who described the country as mere geographical association and others who thought they were interrupted in their march to the south, conquer east, or give up. Even later, when the East, particularly Europe, were manhandled, murdered, and persecuted, the system of the sustenance of Nigeria is united. It was also concerned about the character of Nigerians, and together with his colleagues in Eastern Nigeria, sought to save what he saw annually from bankruptcy over a period, and with it built the land-grant university. Instead of classes at Greek and other European languages, we took up home economics, theater arts, music, nutrition, agriculture, engineering, etc. We revolutionized university education. And today, it's accepted into the 200 institutions in Nigeria. We thank His Excellency.
To mark this very day, is fit and proper to do so. When HCB, the largest bank in Nigeria, with over 128 branches throughout this country, was closed. Cooperative and common, etc. All from Eastern Nigeria were closed. Dr. Oti halted the holistic attitude to Diamond Bank, which he controlled for some years. We welcome his great industrial estate at Owaza going on now. The new Jerusalem city and other establishments around Aba, Umuahia, and Ohafia, which he has already embarked upon. We expect the God's own state in 2031 to be what it should be and different from what Abia State is today. I will call on the University Authority soon to invite this distinguished lecturer to the podium. Thank you. God bless you. I think you can now invite, or is it for me to now invite the Vice Chancellor to welcome us to this. Sir.
Sir, excuse me. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. So next, as the chairman said, we'll take the Vice Chancellor's, the Chief Host address. The Vice Chancellor, sir.
His Excellency, the Governor of Enugu State of Nigeria, Barrister Peter Mbah, ably represented by the Commissioner for Information, Enugu State, Aka is Aka. The Governor of Abia State of Nigeria, His Excellency Alex Otti, who is also the Founders Day lecturer. Chairman of today's event, our own Professor Amuchazi. Principal officers of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka here present, provosts of colleges and directors, members of the state executive councils of Abia and Enugu State, including their legislatures here present, Vice Chancellor of the 7th Vice Chancellor of this university in the person of Professor Frank Ndele and his spouse here present. My other brother Vice Chancellors here present. My Lord Bishop of Nsukka Anglican Communion. Distinguished professors, members of Senate of University of Nigeria, emeriti professors, President of UNN Alumni Association, my Lord Spiritual and Temporal, members of the 4th Estate of the Realm, lions and lionesses, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am most delighted to welcome you all to this 63rd Founders Day lecture of the University of Nigeria. I have reserved the warmest welcome of our special guest of honor, Dr. Peter Mbah, ably represented, Executive Governor of Enugu State, and our guest lecturer, Dr. Alex Otti, the Executive Governor of Abia State of Nigeria. I also welcome most warmly the chairman of the lecture, our own Professor Elochukwu Amuchazi, who retired long ago from the services of the University of Nigeria as a professor of public administration. Please, may you all join me to also welcome in a special way the 7th Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria, Professor Frank N. Ndele, FAS. There is no doubt that Professor Ndele is highly regarded and loved here at the University of Nigeria because of the exceptional achievements he recorded as the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria from 1980 to 1985. Professor Ndele was my Vice Chancellor while I was a student, and my degree certificate bears his signature. He is here with his dear and evergreen wife, who was my English language teacher at the Nsukka High School, otherwise known as Anglican Grammar School in Nsukka. You can imagine I was taught grammar. This is the kind of coming for Professor Ndeli and his wife, and we are most delighted to have them in our midst. I am quite emotional about their presence here today, and their presence has added a lot of color to our celebrations. I welcome also the president of the University of Nigeria Alumni Association, Dr. Doris Okoro, and other officers and members of the UNN Alumni Association who have joined us here today. I'm also pleased to welcome the traditional rulers, Ndi Nze, Ndi Ichie, and also, as well as other friends and well-wishers of the University of Nigeria who have joined us physically and virtually from across the world. At this point, may I request that we stand up in honor of our former Vice Chancellor of this university, 1978 to 1979, in the person of Professor Umaru Shegu, FAS, who passed away 3 days ago on Monday, 2nd October 2023. May his soul rest in perfect peace. The Founders Day celebration of the University of Nigeria is an annual event during which we commemorate and celebrate the birth of the university. In October 1960, the founding of the University of Nigeria was dubbed the Nsukka Experiment, was visualized and brought to life by the Right Honorable Dr. Benjamin Nnamdi Azikiwe, Great Sikh of Africa, who became our first chancellor in 1960. That timely vision of Zeke and his fellow dreamers, quote, paved the way for the establishment of indigenous universities in the country. Of course, this morning at the conference room, I enumerated some of the people that were engaged in the founding of this university. Today, the number of universities in the country has risen to more than 170. What a dream. Being the first indigenous university in the country, the Founders Day celebration of the University of Nigeria should be seen as the celebration of the birthing of indigenous universities in Nigeria. The Founders Day lecture is always the highest point of the activities marking the week-long celebrations. The lecture is intended to create a stage for serious reflections and discussions on issues of national and global interest. Thus, the honor of delivering our Founders Day lecture is reserved for persons of uncommon achievements. We would usually persons whose achievements will serve to inspire and motivate the staff, students, the alumni of our university. There is no doubt that our 63rd Founders Day lecturer, Dr. Alex Oti, belongs to this special class of persons. Dr. Alex Oti, the Executive Governor of Abia State, is a first-class economist, banker, and versatile manager of men and resources. Dr. Oti also belongs to that special family of alumni of the university by being the deserving recipient of the honorary doctorate degree of the University of Nigeria. At the press briefing, which we held on Tuesday, 3rd October, a journalist out of enthusiasm asked me why Dr. Uti. You know, these journalists, they can ask questions. And I answered, well, I asked the chairman of Senate Ceremonials Committee to conduct an informal survey to determine who the university community would like to give our 63rd Founders Day lecture. I am happy to report that out of the 6 names that were being considered, Dr. Alex Oti came up top. So His Excellency, Dr. Alex Oti, is here today by popular demand. Our chairman, Professor Elochukwu Amuchazi, is a senior citizen and a professor of public administration who retired from the services of the University of Nigeria. He is a national figure and served as the pioneer Director General of National Orientation Agency. The topic of today's lecture is removal of petrol subsidy, facing the challenges and harnessing the opportunities. Petrol subsidy removal is a hot and trending topic in Nigeria and even beyond. And there is no better place to have this conversation than here at the University of Nigeria. First, I am quite grateful that His Excellency Dr. Alex Oti kindly accepted to do us the honor of delivering this lecture at our anniversary. And Professor Amuchazi, a political scientist, will do justice to the lecture. And it promises to be a truly memorable day for us all, and I am sure that the fallout from the lecture will go viral in the days to come. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as the chief host at today's occasion, my responsibility is to welcome you and assure you of the traditional hospitality of the University of Nigeria and the host community. I believe I have fulfilled the task. Therefore, let me request that you relax and enjoy the rest of the activities of the day. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Let's do better than we just did for the Vice Chancellor. And we're almost there. The masculine will soon dance. May I invite to read the citation of the 63rd Founders Day lecturer, the University Curator, Dr. Ikenna Omegbu. It's an applause for the University Curator. I've been told that we have to keep the microphone as close as possible to about to speak into the microphone so that those at the rear can hear. Ikenna, you heard me, right? Thank you.
Chairman of today's event, sir, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria, sir, ladies and gentlemen, lions and lionesses, permit me to stand on protocol already established to present to this august assemblage the 63rd Founders Day lecturer of the University of Nigeria, His Excellency Dr. Alex Chioma Oti Nwefam. Native of Uwehimvose, a Hilugoro ancient kingdom autonomous community, Isialanga South local government area of Abia State, Nigeria. Born on February 18, 1965, a graduate of the University of Port Harcourt, a graduate of Lagos Business School, University of Lagos, a graduate of Harvard Business School, Boston, United States of America, a graduate of Stanford University, California, USA, a graduate of Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania, USA, a graduate of Columbia Business School, Columbia University of New York, USA, and a graduate of INSEAD Fontainebleau, France, Europe. Honored with a Doctor of Business Administration, Babcock University. Doctor of Science, University of Port Harcourt. And Doctor of Public Administration, University of Nigeria. His Excellency Dr. Alex Oti Oefar, the 63rd Founders Day lecturer of the University of Nigeria, was principal manager and head of the corporate banking sector, SAF, saddled with the responsibility of delivering the oil and gas business for the United Bank of Africa, UBA, and later promoted to Assistant General Manager, UBA. At the First Bank of Nigeria, PLC, he was an Assistant General Manager in charge of the Energy Group, a Deputy General Manager, an Executive Director, Commercial Banking, an Executive Director, South, and an Executive Director, Southeast and South-South. At the Diamond Bank, he was the Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, whose administrative and managerial prowess in less than 2 years saw the bank double its customer deposits and total assets, profitably growing by over 600%, while restoring the shareholders' confidence in the bank. Under the watch of Alex Oti, Diamond Bank PLC became one of the 8 systematically important banks in Nigeria as designated by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Credited with his soul-searching statement, ever since the advent of our nation's second attempt at electoral and constitutional democracy, the governing elite who have straddled our political landscape have continued to be sustained by our culture of silence, both the likes of us here today and the dispossessed. Alex Chioma Oti vacated his venerated position at Diamond Bank to embrace Nigerian partisan politics in 2014. After 2 failed attempts at clinching the Abia State governor's seat, his third attempt paid off and was sworn in on May 29, 2023 as the incumbent executive governor of Abia State. A man of many seemingly unrelated paths, Dr. Alex Oti has applied his wisdom and tact in many variegated occasions, professions, and positions, including Director, Airtel Nigeria Limited, Director, FBN Mortgages Limited, Director, First Pension Custodian Nigeria Limited, Member, Governing Council of the University of Port Harcourt, Chairman, Economics and Statistics Committee, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Member, Governing Council of Babcock University, Chairman, Body of Banks CEOs, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, Chairman, Diamond Bank, Member, Board of Directors, Diamond Bank Dubene, SA, Chairman, Bankers Committee, Subcommittee on Economic Development, Sustainability and Gender, and Pioneer Chairman, University of Port Harcourt Foundation Advisory Board. Dr. Alex Oti is active on the international speaking circuit, especially on the subjects of banking and finance, leadership, management, financial inclusion, etc. He is a member of the editorial board of these day newspapers and writes a fortnightly column Outside the Box. He is the author of Saving the Future, Agenda for Economic Development and Prosperity, published by Author House in 2016. In recognition of his commitment and contribution to humanitarian and community development in the country, Dr. Oti has been honored with several chieftaincy titles, including the National Award of the Officer of the Order of the Federal Republic, OFR, in 2014 by the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. On the international scene, Dr. Oti has similarly been recognized for distinguishing himself in service and achievement with many awards, including Africa Vision Award at the 18th Africa Achievements Award in Accra, Ghana. The International Banker of the Year Award at the US Africa Best of Africa 2013 honors in Houston, United States of America. Listed on the International Who is Who of Professionals USA. He loves playing sports, listening to music, reading, traveling, and meeting people. Dr. Oti is happily married to his affable spouse, Her Excellency Mrs. Priscilla Chidima Oti. And the union is blessed with 3 lovely children. His Excellency Dr. Alex Oti has persuasively proven himself an extemporal entrepreneur, a pecuniary trailblazer, a multi-talented manager of men and means, a diligent go-getter, an inexorable economist, a compassionate philanthropist, an exceptional business administrator, and an honest politician. To present the 63rd Founders Day lecture of the University of Nigeria, I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency, Dr. Alex Chioma Oti.
Shall we be seated, please? Your Excellency, the Governor of Enugu State, Peter Mba, here represented by the Commissioner for Information, Aka is the Aka. The 7th Vice Chancellor of this great university, and your lovely wife, Professor Ndele, the chairman of the occasion, Professor Elochukwu Amucheze, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me also stand on the existing protocols. Let me start by welcoming you to the 63rd Founder Day Lecture of the University of Nigeria in Nsukka, the only University of Nigeria. I can remember time and time again attempts had been made to change the name of the university, but all those attempts failed. At some time, there was an attempt to bribe the university with the name of the founder. But the administrators of the university were smarter. And before you knew it, Anambra State renamed Anambra State University of Technology, Nnamdi Azikiwe University of Technology. And you know what that did? That put a death knell on that attempt. We were all watching from outside, and we knew what was happening. So the name Nnamdi Azikiwe had been taken. So since it had been taken, then we better leave University of Nigeria with this name. I'll go straight into the lecture, and it is an academic lecture. So I'm going to deliver it like an academic, even though I'm not one. So if it is long, please pardon me, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible without missing out on any important fact. The title, like you know, is Fuel Subsidy Removal, dealing with the challenges, harnessing the opportunities. And I would like to start with 2 quotes that I also had the honor of reproducing in my now rested fortnightly column on the back page of This Day, titled Outside the Box. Outside the Box made its debut in March 2016, and we rested it as we went back into the political arena by the end of December 2021. The first one is from Murray Rothbard. Murray Rothbard lived between 1926 and 1995. And he says, government subsidy systems promote inefficiency in production and efficiency in coercion. and then subservience while penalizing efficiency in production and inefficiency in predation, unquote. Then Sarah Palin, I'm sure you remember her. She says that you either get free stuff or you get freedom. You cannot have both. And you need to make a choice. And you probably have to do it now. That was Sarah Palin. I've divided my presentation into sections. From section 1, which introduces the presentation, to section 9, which draws the presentation to a close. By the time we are done with the presentation, you will get copies on your device. In Abia State, we have gone paperless. So I'm going to give you a website, www.alexotti, just like my name, .com. So if you go into that website, my presentation will be waiting there for you. If you still insist on paper, you can then print with your printer. Permit me to begin by expressing my most profound gratitude to the Vice Chancellor of this great citadel of learning, Professor Charles Arinze-Chukwu Igwe, and members of the various organs of the university whose considerations made my nomination and confirmation as the guest lecturer for this year's University of Nigeria Nsukka Founders Day celebration possible. And I'd like to congratulate Professor Igwe, because as has been revealed here, he is the first alumnus of the university to occupy the seat of the Vice Chancellor. It shows that the university has come of age, even though to me it doesn't matter, because what is important is the quality of the man and not where he schooled. And I believe that for Professor Ndele, he will agree with me. He did very well. We used to read him in history books, so I'm very happy to see him here today. Congratulations, sir. I also want to thank our dearly beloved elder statesman and father, Professor Elochukwu Amojaze, for accepting to be the chairman of this event. His presence has no doubt added to the intellectual ambience of this venue, and I'm grateful for his sacrifices in time and other resources to be here. Professor Amojaze is a father to me. Like I said, at the place we were being received, him and I go back as father and son several decades ago, so I'm happy that he's here today. He rendered so much support during our campaigns. I remember a tough discussion I had with him when I joined APC, and he said he was not going to accept it. Little did I know that I wasn't going to run the election on the platform of APC. He was right, I was wrong. Prof, thank you very much. This for me is one honor I do not take lightly for reasons of UNN's historical standing as the foremost indigenous center for excellence in scholarship and research. The streams of disruptive ideas and thoughts from this extraordinary institution have continued to set the standards in different fields of learning and human endeavor, including medicine, law, and jurisprudence, economics and finance, engineering and sciences, mathematics and computing. The University of Nigeria, since opening its doors staff and students 63 years ago, has come to represent more than just an institution of learning. For while keeping faith with the founding philosophy, which is aptly captured in this simple but thoughtful line, to seek truth, teach truth, and preserve truth, the university has come to embody the untiring spirit of our people in the search for meaning and significance in a world where superior knowledge and its appropriate application remains the critical factor that separates wealthy industrial nations from those at the lower rungs of the development ladder. For millions of people over the last 6 decades and more, especially the students and scholars who have passed through its hallowed walls, the University of Nigeria is not just another higher institution. It is the ideal ground for self-discovery through a determined search for the truth, a passionate commitment to teaching the same truth consistently, and an abiding duty to the preservation of the whole truth as found and taught for generations to come. I'm therefore honored to stand before this august gathering to share my thoughts on what I consider a topical issue in today's Nigeria, the path to sustainability and stability in the wake of the federal government's removal of subsidy from premium motor spirit, PMS, popularly called petrol or fuel in common parlance. This podium offers, one, a national platform to discuss difficult issues, ask hard questions, and make recommendations that may not be immediately popular, but hold the key to the long-term solutions that we ultimately seek. In the spirit of seeking, teaching, and preserving the truth, which is at the foundation of this university's very existence, I shall try to keep my engagement firmly on information and data. I know to be true, remaining objective and avoiding narrow appeals to sentimentalism, while not ignoring the pains of those that have been exposed to new layers of vulnerabilities by the developments in focus. I want to especially honor all the great men and women who have stood on this podium over the last 63 years, sharing the ideas and thoughts on major issues of the day. I thank them for the foundation of excellence they have laid and hope to continue along the path today. It is my conviction that when properly harnessed, ideas from platforms such as this have in them the very seeds that, if well watered, can turn the tide of things around in the country, and there is no better time to start than now. With our nation in dire straits and hopes dissipating for many, even amongst the well-to-do, we must look to the power of ideas, develop the political will to follow through on reforms, and make the necessary sacrifices, especially as leaders, to unleash the immense potentials of this great and resilient country called Nigeria. The first truth we need to know is that time is running out. We can no longer to hold off on some of the tough choices that confront us as a people. The time for blame game is long gone, and if we do not muster the will to do that which may seem difficult today, we may be ultimately consumed by the inevitable consequences of our indecision tomorrow. So the second part I've titled, why talk about subsidy removal in the first place? I want to especially thank Professor Bennett C. Nwanguma and his team in the University Senate Ceremonials Committee for generously offering me the freedom to choose the topic for this year's Founders Day lecture. I'm very thankful for that privilege because it afforded me the opportunity to initiate a conversation that has broad national significance. My aim is to ask critical questions that will task us to look at the issues in focus in a slightly different manner and be able to deal with things as they are. And this is to say that I do not have all the answers. The truth is that conversations around the subject of subsidy have become very unpopular, and it is a topic many would rather avoid. Yes, those who would rather discuss something else have their justifications because one wrong statement can sink an entire political career, destroy long-standing relationships, and attract opprobrium from beneficiaries of the current system. But then, I'm not new to the discussion of fuel subsidy. In my This Day newspaper back page column outside the box titled Subsidies, Walking the Monkey and Feeding the Baboon, published on September 24, 2018, I had maintained that subsidies end up benefiting the unintended and penalizing the very people it was meant to protect. In the heat of the coronavirus pandemic, precisely on the 24th of August 2020, I had published another article in my column titled Towards Dismantling the Petroleum Subsidy Regime. In the same newspaper, where I had argued that the pronouncement made by the NNPC GMD, and is still the GMD today, that subsidy had gone for good and was not going to be was not going to be effective except the structures supporting it, including the PPP array, were dismantled. Sadly, I turned out to be right, as subsidy stayed a huge comeback months later and remained with us until a few months ago. So I'm not ignorant of the risks associated with this topic, particularly at this time. But then, life is about risks and returns, and my life has not been insulated from risks. But permit me to share some examples. When I quit banking at the peak of my career to join the murky terrain of politics, many, including close friends and family members, were convinced I had lost my mind. Who resigns as the group managing director and CEO of a thriving bank to join the long queue at what is essentially a gambling session? To many concerned friends and acquaintances, it was a reckless decision I was sure to regret. When I returned to the battlefield 4 years later, after a series of heartbreaking events on and off the political turf, delegations of close friends and family were sent to remind me of the tragedy of 2015 and why I should accept the fact that decent individuals with independent convictions have no business in the Nigerian political terrain. I was advised in clear terms to quit and return to something less risky. But of course, my mind was made up. While my well-intentioned friends and self-appointed advisors saw the dangers and treachery that had is happening outside the campuses. So perhaps we can see in this present challenge an opportunity to rebuild the broken marriage between the gown and the town. Lastly, I will share some of the initial steps we have taken in Abia to solve the larger economic and social problems of poverty, unemployment, and general sense of hopelessness. The challenges that spurred me to throw my heart into a very difficult ring in the first place. This last part is important because I believe that we cannot deal with the many challenges that confront us as a nation, including the ones that just got exacerbated following the removal of subsidy on PMN by focusing exclusively on what happens in Abuja. Nigeria runs a federal system, albeit an imperfect one. So while we constantly keep our eyes on the bigger picture, we must always be attentive to what is happening across the federation, the federating units, especially in places where we have some forms of influence, be it voting powers or a voice that resonates across the community. Above all, I will be uncharitable to this special audience if I make endless suggestions on what needs to be done without telling you what I'm doing to lessen the socio-economic burdens of the common man living or doing business in Abia, where I hold executive powers. So, and I take you now to the third part of this presentation, and I've titled it, What is Subsidy and Why Does it Matter? Generally, subsidy represents a system put in place by an entity to offset a part of the economic cost of supply for a particular commodity or service in order to keep the prices below the actual market value. Insights from Ovaga and Okechukwu 2022 represent subsidies as financial or non-financial incentives provided by the government or other organizations to support specific industries, sectors, or individuals. Essentially, subsidy connotes an attempt by government to distort the market value of a commodity, reasons connected to politics, economics, or social concerns. A study by OECD defined subsidy as any government action or initiative that reduces the amount consumers pay for a unit of the subsidized commodity. For the Center for Public Policy Alternatives, subsidy represents a reverse tax. As many scholars have argued, subsidies are introduced to alleviate economic burdens, promote growth, and address market failures. Across the world, subsidies can come in forms of policy measures and frameworks, such as targeted public expenditure, equity infusions into some categories of businesses, tax incentives to individuals and businesses, zero to low interest loans, government provision of goods and services, procurement patterns that favor some categories of businesses, and price support targeted at specific or general consumer groups. Holistically, subsidy in all its variants entail conscious and systematic effort by government and its institutions to support a particular actor or group of players within the larger economy in order to achieve certain predetermined objectives, which, as indicated earlier, could be political, economic, or social. These economic agents may be consumers, they may also be producers. A 2023 PwC publication argued that the Nigerian economy is heavily subsidized with government's extensive control measures seen in critical sectors as education, electricity, foreign exchange, and for almost 5 decades, petroleum products. You can also add agriculture and health to this expansive list. On a deeper reflection, one would also realize that religious pilgrimages also receive heavy subsidy from federal and state government. In its final form, subsidies can be used to protect local industries against external competition when it is channeled to support domestic producers by lowering cost of production, drive higher investment capital, and stimulate domestic demand. Furthermore, it can also represent a mechanism for offering consumption support to individuals and families, insulating them from the vagaries of the wider global and local market, and improve access to goods and services that are deemed critical by the government. The introduction of petroleum product subsidies in Nigeria in the 1970s is a clear example of the use of subsidies to protect domestic consumers. Subsidies are applied by governments across developed and developing economies in pursuit of different outcomes, with agriculture and energy products ranking amongst the most subsidized commodities in the world. The US federal government, for example, spends $30 billion annually on agro subsidies. The numbers begin to get to $75 billion annually if states and municipal subsidies are considered. Across the Atlantic, governments within the EU economic bloc spent about €184 billion on energy subsidies in 2021, while recent reports indicate that the amount is approaching €800 billion mark this year, 2023. Subsidies can be direct or indirect. Examples of direct subsidies include price controls, as was the case with petrol in the country until May this year, tax exemptions, and extensions of provisional grants. In all this, one finds that the government, through these mechanisms, is keenly interested in providing direct support to consumers. Price control and provisional grants when targeted at families and individuals and producers through the offer of tax exemptions and provisional grants when targeted at small or large-scale businesses. Indirect subsidies, on the other hand, capture the broad set of initiatives and frameworks put in place by the government to support the production of specific set of goods or the provision of certain services that have implications for national growth, development, and public interest. Forms of indirect subsidies, according to the Center for Public Policy Alternatives, would include the creation of favorable regulatory frameworks, institutionalized support for research and development. Speaking to the specifics of petroleum subsidy, Obaga and Okechukwu described it as government's discount prevailing market price of fuel. As Ozil and Obiora 2023 posited, the existence of subsidies means that consumers pay below the market price per liter of products. A 2023 study by Deloitte told a similar line and explained subsidy on petroleum products as the transfer of money from the government to an entity, one with responsibility for the supply and distribution of petroleum products, leading to a decline in the price of the products. A lower than actual market price brings about increase in demand and ultimately the shifting of the demand curve to the right. As Akombi 2023 opined, government subsidy on petrol is designed to compensate for the disparity between the actual retail price as determined by the global realities of crude oil and the refining prices and what is sold at fuel pumps across the country. Furthermore, subsidy payments to the oil marketers are also used to cover the cost of product transportation across the country as a way of maintaining price uniformity from north to south. Like all forms of subsidies, petrol subsidy was a policy instrument used by the federal government to guarantee access to the products for millions of individuals and businesses, insulating local consumers from the notorious volatilities of global oil markets. As Pupuola 2020 and Soromekun 2020 low-income individuals and families. This argument takes cognizance of the fact that across Nigeria, most vehicles run on petrol. One can also add that because transportation cost is one of the main drivers of inflation, especially of food and agricultural products, the subsidy instrument we can generally argue are a very controversial tool for driving an economy in a certain direction. Pursuing targeted outcomes while using the financial muscle of the government to empower either the consumers by keeping the prices of particular products, petrol in this case, below the supply cost, or by supporting producers in ways that lower their production and general supply costs, enabling them to ultimately reach certain milestones, whether it is offering the commodities they produce at lower prices or insulating them from competitive pressure from foreign players. I have a section here, section 4, on the history and dynamics of petrol subsidy in Nigeria. I would like to skip this, hoping that when you visit the website, you can go through it because it is a history that a lot of us know. Do you agree? Okay. So I move to section 5, ending the fuel subsidy in Nigeria was a matter of economic survival. A 2023 study by PwC is PricewaterhouseCoopers, established that in the last 18 years, the Nigerian government spent an estimated $30 billion on subsidy payment. In 2022 alone, the fee was 4.4 trillion naira, and about 25% of this sum was borrowed. We have included a table here which shows government's expenditure on the critical sectors of our national life vis-a-vis the outlay on subsidy over the past 9 years. And that is from 2022 back to 2014. Now, on defense, the government expenditure was 7 trillion naira. Education, almost 7 trillion, 6.2 trillion. Health, 4.2 trillion. But wait for it, fuel subsidy, 11.5 trillion. So on the basis of the data presented here, it is obvious that there can be no argument to justify the contribution of the subsidy regime. Although a point can also be made that a few structures should have been put in place to mitigate the shock and offer an appropriate safety net to the poor and the vulnerable, who now have to bear the inevitable brunt of rising inflation as a result of the higher transport costs, as a KPMG 2023 survey found out. The point, however, must be made that there have been two difficult choices. There have been two difficult choices before us since 2010. To continue the controversial payment of subsidy to elite oil marketers while the nation walked quickly to the edge of financial bankruptcy and ultimate collapse, or as a June 2023 publication by Deloitte stated, bite the bullet and put an end to the hemorrhaging of the nation's treasury with the attendant short to medium-term hardship on low and middle-income individuals and families. Whether the economic pains and difficulties as we are witnessing now would continue in the long run or escalate into something much scarier would boil down to how well the challenges are managed at all levels by governments and businesses. So the hard question, does subsidy really benefit the poor? The singular biggest argument, especially by public commentators, to justify the continuation of the subsidy regime is that subsidy insulates poor households from the uncertainties of the global oil market. While this may make sense on the surface, as government must at all times demonstrate compassion for the poor, not a lot of people have really taken time to understand how the poor actually interacts on the strength of the existence of fuel subsidy. How much does the average low-income household spend on petrol monthly? How often do you see them on the road in petrol-gulping SUVs? How many financially constrained homes rely on petrol generators to supply electricity to their homes every night? Of the 103 million liters petrol consumption in Nigeria as of June 2022, according to the GMB of NNPC, what percentage was consumed by households in rural communities or poor urban suburbs? There are a lot more uncomfortable questions that can be asked. At the same time, there are also a few things we must now know. A May 2023 report by PwC indicates that households in the bottom 40% of the income distribution ladder account for less than 3% of all fuel purchases. And I'll take that again. A May 2023 report by PwC indicates that households in the bottom 40% of the income distribution ladder account for less than 3% of all fuel purchases. Think about it for a moment. The simple import of the above information is that the government spent about $30 billion in the last 18 years paying subsidy for commodities that the major consumers can afford without such hefty support. Petroleum product subsidy in Nigeria, in its practical application, benefited the rich 97% of the time, while the poor man only had crumbs through intermittent public transportation. You can stretch things further and find out from your experience in your respective local communities how often do you find poor people inside public transportation. We know how they go to farms, evening markets, and community events. They clearly don't need online cab hailing services for any of those. Consider also that most vehicles used in public transportation, such as large mass transit buses, run on diesel, which have long been deregulated, alongside kerosene, another product that is patronized mostly by low-income families. Again, ask yourself, who were the real beneficiaries of petrol subsidies? Certainly not the poor, for the most part. And then I ask another question. Subsidy payments, did it enable cross-border economic sabotage? Subsidy payment was designed to help poor Nigerians keep transport costs low and tame inflation as a result of high input costs. Well, that is what the theory says, but a whole lot more was happening. According to the same MD of NNPC, Mele Kyari, of the 103 million liters of petrol reportedly consumed daily in the country at the time, a whopping 58 million liters were smuggled to neighboring countries. As per my articles mentioned above, our daily consumption moved from 30 million liters in 2017 to 58 million liters in 2019, and of course, 103 million liters in 2022. Again, think about this. Cheap petroleum products in Nigeria were used to enrich smugglers who make extraordinary profit just by moving the product across the border. Does anyone think that it makes sense for Nigeria to pay daily for 58 million liters used in other countries? Nigeria pays 600 naira as subsidy for every liter of petrol imported into the country last year, according to official figures. If you do the math, you will agree with me that indeed there was an urgent need to look at things differently and face the issues as they are. Now I go to funding elite corruption. The old arrangement, which only approves subsidy payments for imported petrol, meant that the major beneficiaries were elite businessmen, those who can pull the resources to go into fuel importation. This system encouraged arbitrage. West, a part of the payment for subsidy covered demurrage and transportation inefficiency and other forms of corruption as a result of absence of effective monitoring and reporting systems and deliberate manipulation of the system by connected individuals in connivance with dishonest officials. The complexities of the subsidy regime encouraged a lot of unwholesome practices. In the end, rather than benefit from the extensive outlay as had been originally intended, the poor ultimately find themselves funding through our collective resources the extravagant lifestyle of the rich and the highly connected. How about investments in the petroleum sector? I dare say that subsidy also crippled it. Have you taken time to find out why Nigeria is the only major oil producing country in the world without a functional refinery? Is refining of crude oil so expensive in the refining of crude oil in the country? For obvious reasons. For one, he cannot compete with those who earn subsidies for fuel imports, as his prices will be higher than those imported from outside. I will add that the lack of investment in domestic refining has damaged the nation's economy extensively, costing jobs, stifled the growth of ancillary industries, and ultimately denied the citizens the many benefits of living in an oil-producing economy. So, I go to the sixth part. Can a good idea be mismanaged? Maybe yes. The removal of petroleum subsidy was clearly the right decision and should have been done decades ago, or even earlier. But then, I'm of the considered opinion that more could have been done to insulate the public from the anticipated shocks. Being a policy that would introduce shock into the system, I believe it should have been communicated better. I do not think that much was done to properly educate the public on the issues at stake and the danger continued payment of subsidy posed to the economic health of the country. The impression had long been created that subsidies were government's handouts to the poor. The evidence that the poor had not really gained as much as they thought could have been put in the public domain. Over the years, one thing I've learned in communicating policies and plans is that you can never get everyone to agree with your proposal. However, since sincere and clear communication using varieties of channels will help on two fronts: buy you genuine public support and give your audience an opportunity to understand your intentions better. Additionally, timely communication helps lessen the shock that some drastic government decisions, such as the petrol subsidy removal, was bound to cause. That said, it must be noted that the pronouncement was made on the day the new government was sworn in, giving no room for robust engagement. Furthermore, it had been established that subsidy on petrol does not actually help the poor, as had been argued in the past. A more robust policy framework should have been developed to offer structured support targeted at specific areas of needs. As a World Bank report observed, Nigeria is the only country in the world with a universal price subsidy that applies exclusively to petroleum products. Universal price subsidies for liquid fuels are almost always regressive, as the rich consume far more fuel than the poor. PMS subsidies are especially regressive because PMS is used primarily in light and medium duty motor vehicles, which are rarely owned by the poor. Since raising PMS prices tends to have minimal adverse effects on poor households, governments worldwide have typically prioritized eliminating PMS subsidies over those that apply to other fuels. However, Nigeria has done the opposite, eliminating all subsidies for liquid fuels other than PMS. Why are we doing the opposite of what every other country in the world is doing? In Angola, recently, the government reduced its subsidy payment on PMS, but it significantly retained subsidies on other petroleum products, including diesel, cooking oil, and gas oil. In Senegal, subsidy on kerosene, used mostly by the poor, remained while subsidies on other products were removed. If you pay careful attention, you will notice that the pattern in most developed and developing economies is to identify and pay subsidy on energy products that are mostly used by the poor to insulate them from the economic hardships that petrol subsidy removal would inevitably bring. In my view, these international standard practices should have been brought to bear before biting the bullets. Importantly, deliberate considerations should have been made for the two categories of poor people in the country, the urban and the rural poor. While the urban poor would have benefited extensively from a subsidized mass transit system, the rural poor will be more satisfied with cash transfers, food palliatives, farm inputs, low-interest agro loan, targeted specifically at smallholder farms. Thank you. The question of wages should also have been considered, although it is still not too late. The truth, however, is that the national minimum wage must reflect current economic realities. Otherwise, what you get is a starvation wage, which will inevitably lead to frustration. I know a lot of people would ask, why am I recommending a recalibration of the minimum wage when many state governments are struggling to pay the current 30,000 naira minimum wage? The issue, in my view, has to do with priorities. What are we focusing on? I've always harped on the unique place of the human being in the entire development process. Nothing else makes sense if the welfare of the population is not given priority attention. Our contention, therefore, is that efforts could have been made to mitigate the impact of the inflation that was bound to follow the removal of the fuel subsidy by putting in place a new national minimum wage framework that would at least answer to the basic needs of the workers. If these fundamentals had been put in place, then the challenges we are currently grappling with, especially as it affects the most economically vulnerable groups, may not have disappeared completely, but could have been minimal. So, the seventh section, we're gradually winding down. So where do we go from here? Is the next question. Recall that we have stated at the beginning of this will be a holistic presentation, laying out the issues part by part to enable. Okay, I'll take this again. Recall that we had started at the beginning that this will be a holistic presentation, laying out the issues part by part to enable a functional understanding of the core elements of the discourse. In this section, attention shall shift to identify how to make the most of the immense economic opportunities that are bound to arise in the medium to long term following the removal of subsidy on fuel. The first issue of interest should be defining how to protect the economically vulnerable from rising food and transportation costs. The truth, whether we accept it or not, is that many more people have fallen into the poverty trap since the removal of the petroleum subsidy on May 29 this year. This much was recently acknowledged by the National Human Rights Commission. The World Bank estimates that 7.1 million more people could be pushed into poverty in a matter of months. The reason for the increased incidence of poverty is not far-fetched. The general inflation rate at the end of August stood at 25.8%, almost 26%, the highest since 2005. Food inflation, 29.34%, and transport fare rose by as much as 98% between May and June 2023. And of course, about 120% when compared with the rate from May 2022. To what extent has wages increased in the last 12 months, even in the last 2 months? Higher fuel costs and unstable electricity supply from the power distribution company have forced many small and medium-scale enterprises out of business. And this gets worse every day, further complicating the worrisome unemployment situation. Again, where do we go from here? For a start, I would recommend the immediate development and implementation of robust quality measures to address the challenges of rising poverty and unemployment. 1, all levels of government must immediately invest in mass transit schemes, strictly as a social service and not as a money-making venture. However, they must be managed by people with a good understanding of how transportation within and across cities work. The mass transit buses must never be used as a political compensation program. Otherwise, the aim will be defeated even before it takes off. I will support a fit-for-purpose partnership with registered transport unions and transporters to work out an effective system that will see the government acquire energy-efficient buses and hand them over to the transporters with a mandate to cover certain routes and charge below market rates, just enough to cover operational expenses and no more. Priority should be given to civil servants and private individuals going to work every morning and returning home in the evening. Fares must be moderate, possibly 50% of what independent transporters charge, and where possible, commuters may be issued monthly electronic tickets, which will be presented at the point of entry, limiting cash handling and associated corruption. Where possible, local bus manufacturers should be allowed to supply and maintain the buses to further stimulate the economy. Such buses should be powered by CNG, that's compressed natural gas, as it has been adjudged a cheaper source, even though their prices are going up, as we now know. If every LGA in Nigeria acquires at least 5 of these big buses with a seating capacity of no less than 50%, all the 36 states and FCT buy an average of 100 units each, and that the federal government acquires about 2,000 units for distribution and operations in all major cities across the country, we will be looking at bringing close to 10,000 new energy-efficient and comfortable buses into our transport system within the next 1 year. Imagine the impact this will have on the economy if supplies are sought from local manufacturers in Anambra, Lagos, Kaduna, and across other parts of the country. By the way, our government has been patronizing the Anambra vehicle manufacturer Innoson, and all our official cars, including mine, are made by Innoson. And I can assure you, the vehicles are good. First, it will create jobs for abundant engineering talents, lead to increased demands for local raw materials, and a major expansion of our national automotive capacity. To be clear, it will be difficult to get almost 10,000 buses from all the local vehicle manufacturers in the country at a very short notice because of capacity. But we must begin with whatever they can avail us immediately, not losing sight of quality assurance issues. I see so many wins from this singular proposal alone. First, it has the potential to modify our intra and intercity transportation system, replacing so many rickety vehicles and buses with more standard energy efficient buses, which will be safer and help us in our carbon limiting commitments as the world drives towards net zero emissions towards the middle of the century. I also see so much happening in terms of job creation and economic rejuvenation across all parts of the country. This new arrangement would also lead to greater investment in CNG retail outlets across the country, and very importantly, the institution of a superior system for supporting the poor without sabotaging the national economy, as petrol subsidy did for more than 4 decades. While the introduction of large capacity CNG buses would help mitigate the impact of the removal of petroleum subsidy on the cost of transportation of persons and goods, we must also look at other means of supporting economically vulnerable groups in the country. In this case, we must also look at offering temporary subsidy for cooking gas in 5 kg or 6 kg cylinders so as to achieve 2 things at the same time. Number 1, encourage households to migrate to clean energy from cooking, and then provide them with structured support in the light of the current high inflation in the country. I'm not advocating that this should be a permanent arrangement, bearing in mind the warning from Milton Friedman about short-term government policies becoming permanent. This subsidy program on cooking gas and gas cylinders can be designed to last for 18 to 36 months, during which the economy must have been stabilized and millions of families in rural and urban households supported to move away from firewood and kerosene stoves. Importantly, we must be more clinical in the way we support low-income households. Presently, there is an $800 million World Bank facility for cushioning the effect of the petrol subsidy removal, targeted at an estimated 10.2 million poor people. The beneficiaries will be selected from the National Social Register and will be spread across the country. To achieve the expected results, this time we must, as several stakeholders advocated recently, take a closer look at the present register and clean it up. Use the appropriate methodologies to capture intended beneficiaries across communities and make sure that the system does not become another vehicle for throwing money into the pockets of rich and connected individuals, as has been the case for a very long time. The larger concern is, if we provide financial support in the form of cash transfers to only about 10 million families, what happens to the others? Remember, National Bureau of Statistics put the number of poor people in Nigeria at over 130 million in 2022, and I'm sure that number has increased towards the end of 2023. How do we take care of the others who would not be covered in the World Bank intervention? This is where I think greater engagements amongst community stakeholders will be required. A system of collecting household income data across communities should begin immediately, and processes must be put in place to avoid multiple and fake registrations and other forms of abuses. This time, efforts must be made to work with banks and financial institutions to capture the intended beneficiaries into the digital financial records, complete with the biometric details. I would advocate that at least 25% of the savings from the removal of subsidy, about 1 trillion from last year's expenditure, be used to support another batch of 20 million poor Nigerians for a period of 5 or 6 months. Additionally, we can channel another 25% of the savings on public works initiatives, mobilizing our army of unemployed youths to get involved in government-financed infrastructure projects, including roads and mass housing projects. This particular initiative will be used to achieve two related objectives: tackling youth unemployment, thereby cutting down poverty levels, and ultimately improving our public infrastructure, which are critical engines of economic growth. We recommend that local governments, states, and federal government must channel a part of their receipt from subsidy saving to that segment. Again, I would recommend 25% to support MSME businesses through training and capacity building, exposure to local and domestic markets, infrastructure support, and lastly, provision of structural financing to existing and intending entrepreneurs. I'm of the view that the best way to harness the energy and creativity of our young people is to expand the enterprise space, take off the many restrictions that have been known to frustrate businesses, such as multiple taxation and harassment by thugs. Additionally, we must give them the institutional support they need to compete on the same level as their peers from Southeast Asia. This is the best time to support our farmers, founders of innovative startups, fashion designers, entertainers, small-scale manufacturers, and all other individuals who are doing great things across Nigeria. Lastly, and for me, most importantly, there is no better time to invest in our power generation and distribution value chain than now. One more time, I would recommend we do this with the remaining 25% of the 4 trillion we paid for subsidy in 2022. We should be tired of making excuses by now. The question going forward should be, what can we do to increase our power generation capacity in the short to medium term using a multiplicity of sources? This is not for me to answer from this podium, but as a matter of urgency, finding answers to this question holds the key to what becomes of Nigeria in the next decade. With cheap petrol gone, foreign exchange trading at very high rates, and diesel prices reaching an all-time high, it is very likely that our manufacturing space will shrink further in the months ahead. And the truth is that for now, there is very little that can be done to mitigate that reality. If, however, we make the right choices in terms of the pattern of strategic investment in the electricity sector, a lot will be different in a few years to come. As we already know, there is no point reinventing the wheel. All we need to do is to look at what other developing economies with our population size and economic system have done to stabilize electricity generation and distribution over the last 2 decades. I would recommend that in addition to spending more to increase our electricity output for industrial and household needs, which is very critical in the absence of cheap petrol and diesel, we must also encourage private sector players to look actively towards the sector, leveraging on existing legislations. Big oil companies operating in the country, including NNPC and LNG, and others must be encouraged using a combination of smart policy options to channel a part of their earnings and profits into investing in electricity supply to support businesses and households and make the impact of petrol subsidy removal less severe. One more thing I must mention as I round off this segment is the golden opportunity we now have to invest in local refining and petroleum products. With subsidy on all petroleum products gone, the fear of market distortion is eliminated, and investors can now take advantage of the new opportunity to tap into the sector by building modular and standard refineries as determined by business considerations. Thank you. As you can see, there are manifold opportunities for the country to reinvent itself economically in the light of the recent subsidy removal. All of these opportunities have clear potential for improved welfare packages for the most economically vulnerable population, job creation, economic stability, strengthening the naira, attracting foreign investment, more efficient utilization of our petroleum resources, as we find in other oil-producing countries, and a more practical path towards energy transition from crude oil to cleaner alternatives. I would urge members of the university community to engage in more research and provide clear guidelines to the government on what more can be done in the short to long term to enable us fully harness the emerging opportunities from the recent removal of petroleum subsidy. I will personally support such research, especially those with bearing on fully exploiting our gas potential, because I believe that the future is still gas. There are sufficient unexploited gas deposits in the country, more than enough to turn Nigeria into something very close to a fully developed country in the next 2 decades, if we do what is right. The Abia State government, which I lead, will also be interested in going into partnership with investors in the gas sector, because we are of the view that one thing we must begin to do is to invest public resources in areas where there are guaranteed returns and the opportunities to drive the socio-economic agenda of the government. I'll be open to further talks in this regard. The point we must go home with today is that we can quickly turn things around if only we develop the courage to make informed decisions on programs relating to social and economic investments using savings that will eventually accrue to us and its federating units from the removal of petroleum subsidy. It must be emphasized that most of the issues dealt with here are short-term palliatives to deal with the issue of removal of petroleum subsidy. Ultimately, a more enduring solution would have to do with pulling people out of poverty by industrializing our country and ultimately developing it. I have written extensively on this, and you may wish to consult some of my writings on this. Last but not the least, in terms of sections, what have we done in Abia to support vulnerable families and individuals? The day I was sworn in as governor was also the day the removal of subsidy on petrol was announced by President Tinubu. So we met a very difficult situation that needed to be carefully managed. We began by offering a message of hope to the people and assuring the civil servant that the era of owing salaries was gone, and that by the 28th of every month, every legitimate staff of the state civil service, be them in the local government or the state proper, will receive their full emoluments. We soon followed up by paying part of the accumulated arrears of salaries we inherited from the previous government. We are progressively supporting our civil servants by keeping our commitment to prompt and regular payment of salary, and also clearing up arrears in order to increase the amount of disposable income available to them, those in our employ. We have also put in mechanisms that will make for smooth and seamless payment of pensions to all retirees as soon as they sign out from the state civil service. So far, appreciable progress has been made, and I can tell you that while a few teething problems remain, our pensioners are beginning to see clear signal that in the new Abia we are building, owing senior citizens their entitlements will be an anathema. Beyond just paying them, we have also directed the State Ministry of Health to enroll a certain category of pensioners in the state into a health insurance scheme that guarantees steady access to quality health care for our retirees. So far, close to 5,000 pensioners have been enrolled, and we shall add to this number in the days and months ahead. To support those running their private businesses, we gave tax holiday to micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises, asking that all forms of levies and taxes be stopped to enable them to manage the shock, especially in the early days. We are continuing to streamline the revenue collection process to enable efficiency, cut out double taxation, and make the system independent in ways that limit the activities of middlemen. Through the appropriate agencies and boards, we have also harmonized the revenue collection process, working with LGAs to adopt a single collection framework for ease of tax administration and convenience for all parties. The state has so far received about 19,050 kg bags of rice from the center, and we insisted that the committee in charge ensured that only the poorest of the poor in communities benefited. Government appointees, traditional rulers, religious leaders, and other well-to-do individuals were excluded. Importantly, we directed that the local communities should be the point of distribution as a way of cutting out palliative profiteers, individuals and groups who come under different umbrellas to make claims on such items and then hoard them for themselves. The committee gives us regular briefs and reports, and in the few places where we noticed deviation from the template, the individuals in charge have been directed to follow the guidelines and in some cases reprimanded or have faced sanctions. The State Palliative Management Committee, headed by a Catholic priest and populated by civil society organizations, NLC and DUC, was directed to study how we can invest the 2 billion palliative fund we got from the federal government into mass transit schemes. We shall be getting their report soon so that we can work together to see how the cost of transportation can be reduced for commuters buying intra and intercity routes. Focusing clearly on fixed income earners, whether in government or private establishment. This program shall go into effect in Aba and Umuahia before the end of the year and then other parts of the state in the next year. We also launched free medical service programs in all public hospitals in the state so that in this period of economic difficulties, lack of cash will not stop people from attending to their health needs. It is also instructive to note that our government has rehabilitated or in the process of rehabilitating the 15 general hospitals and of course primary health care centers in Abia so that our hospitals will be in a good state. So far, thousands of individuals, including pregnant women, nursing mothers, and others with various ailments have been attended to. The ongoing free medical services cover surgeries, including eye operations, drugs, laboratory scans, and related diagnostic services, and it has been received very well. We are presently working on a template to pay transport support allowance to civil servants starting from this month. Our plan is to raise current salaries by a certain percentage depending on grade levels and our ability to pay. The aim is to cushion the harsh impact of the rising inflationary trend on their earnings and support them to provide basic things for their families. Our plan to launch a 10 billion naira micro, small, and medium scale enterprises fund, as announced on our inauguration day, is still on course, and we will soon conclude the modalities for accessing the funds. The target shall be existing and intending entrepreneurs with innovative and bankable ideas. The present government in Abia is very business friendly, and the grand plan is to make Abia the leading investment destination and hub in Africa. May I use this opportunity to encourage students who intend to go into entrepreneurship on graduation to look no further than Abia State. We are building the new prime investment destination in Nigeria, and our target is the young, innovative individuals with ideas that can turn the economic fortunes around. Whatever you intend to build, an IT startup, an agro venture, a small-scale processing facility, a fashion empire, a service outlet, our government will accompany you through an effective support system that can give you the edge to compete globally. It is our conviction that when MSMEs are well-funded and supported, the problems of unemployment and poverty, critical metrics for measuring economic development, will be curtailed and people can live in dignity, a very important idea for this great university. We are also partnering with independent power producers and others in the electricity value chain to identify how we can support them to come in and help the growth of the enterprise space in the state. As we have mentioned repeatedly, we are tired of excuses, and our commitment to do whatever we can to help individuals and businesses in the way a government should has started. Our extensive commitment in road rehabilitation and reconstruction are also aimed at increasing investments in the state, which ultimately will lead to higher employment opportunities for our young people and expansion of business opportunities in the MSME space. The ultimate agenda is to systematically improve the investment climate in Abia so that the environment does not sabotage the efforts of our entrepreneurs who pass through severe difficulties to remain in business. While we do this for small businesses, we are not closing our eyes to big ones. It is in the light of this that a few days ago we flagged off what promises to be one of the largest industrial parks in West Africa, the Abia Industrial and Innovation Park in Owaza, Okwa West local government. When completed, the industrial park would boast of a modular refinery, a petrochemical and fertilizer industry, a technology hub, a gas processing facility, agricultural processing zone, a seaport, amongst other facilities. Major international oil and gas companies have indicated interest to locate at the prospective export processing zone, as it would have a 24-hour uninterruptible gas-powered electricity. Lions and lionesses, as I conclude, let me acknowledge that things are hard, but we must also open our eyes to see the new vista of opportunities that this difficult season has opened for us. We must be focused on what we can do to harness the latest prospects for economic expansion and growth. It will be painful, most times unbearable, especially for those of you who are students or the staff who are on fixed income. I want to see the expansion of scholarship opportunities for thousands of our brilliant students in this hall. This is a conversation. Thank you. This is a conversation I hope to personally take up with fellow governors, especially in the Southeast. Nothing must stand in the way of the education of our young people, because we shall be doomed if we compromise any further on our investments in quality education. I don't just mean funding the desperation to acquire certificates, but something more holistic, as this university has been doing for the past 63 years. Education is something we must take even more seriously, especially now that the world has moved from a resource-based economy to a knowledge economy. While the University of Nigeria has done brilliantly well in the past 6 decades and 3, I will still want to see even more improvement in terms of its outputs, something geared towards solving the plethora of problems that confront not just the Nigerian society, but our world at large. Education for all, its glory and appeal will be useless if it can find no practical application in the wider society. Whatever is learned here must be valuable to the students on graduation, helping them unlock, in the words of George Washington Carver, the golden door of freedom. The government at all levels, especially our respective local governments and states, must, as a matter of priority, step in to assist the students to support their education. I am working to revive the Abia State Scholarship Board to become more effective, service-oriented, and transparent in its operations. I would also increase the annual subventions to the board and appoint quality and competent hands to build it into a robust vehicle for helping hundreds of thousands of Abia students scattered across the educational institutions in Nigeria, especially those from financially poor homes. On an individual level, I've continued to sponsor hundreds of students in tertiary institutions through the Alex Otis Scholarship Program managed by my foundation. We hope to make it bigger in the years ahead. I'm humbled to acknowledge that no less than 30 of the Alex Otis scholars in this school are in this hall today. Let me encourage you, my dear students, remain optimistic and hardworking. Every great man or woman you see today has an interesting story to tell about passing through difficulties and pain, and then overcoming them to get to where they are today. You shall rejoice in the end if you do not give up. Let me once again thank the Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles Sigwe, and the entire leadership of the University of Nigeria for inviting me. I shall continue to treasure my special relationship with UNN. And whenever or wherever there are areas where my office and this institution can work together, please, I'm a phone call away. Thank you for your leadership role in the university education in Nigeria. Thank you for keeping the vision of the founders of this university alive. Thank you for continually honoring the legacy of our great fathers, including the great and immortal Zik of Africa, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the visionary Sir Michael Ihonu Obara, and several others who gave so much that this university, the first of its kind in the country, shall stand on this soil today. You have shown great resilience in administration and scholarship, and it is my expectation that you shall lead the country into new frontiers in research excellence, ones that are geared towards holistic national development. Above all, thank you for producing quality individuals whose expertise in diverse fields of learning are changing the world, improving our relationship with the environment, and most importantly, teaching us that indeed the search for truth is a continuous quest. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.
Akwụkwọ na-asọ nsọ, ọ na-afịa arụ na mmụta. Onye nwere ntasi obi, ọ ga-amụta akwụkwọ. Ọ bụrụ na nne gị na nna gị nwee ego, ọ bụrụ na nne gị na nna gị nwee ego, ọ bụrụ na nne gị na nna gị nwee ego, ọ bụrụ na nne gị na nna gị nwee ego, ọ bụrụ na nne gị na nna gị nwee ego, ọ bụrụ na nne gị na nna gị nwee ego.
Please sit down. Thank you very much, His Excellency. That was superlative lecture. I was trying to count the number of times His Excellency got applauded, then I lost count. And that's what it takes when you get the right lecturer to be your guest lecturer. We had planned for the Vice Chancellor to meet His Excellency right here and make some presentations on behalf of the university, but I guess the guest lecturer needed to cool down a bit and then soak in the applause that was waiting for him. I don't know how much strength His Excellency's got left in him. We have an option to do it here, but not many people would get a clear view. Thank you, His Excellency. The Vice Chancellor will make presentations, His Excellency, on behalf of the University of Nigeria. That is part of the tradition. First is the lecture plaque.
Again, resting on existing protocol, on behalf of staff, students of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, I've been mandated to present this plaque to His Excellency, Dr. Alex Oti, OFR, on this 63rd Founders Day lecture, being the lecturer of the day for the University of Nigeria, Thursday, the 5th day of October 2023. Congratulations. Again, in our tradition, sir, you know, here at the University of Nigeria, we made mention of this fact that this was the first university in Nigeria that did music or had music as a department, vocational education, drama, health economics, fine and applied arts, and sir, the band playing this music department of University of Nigeria. And also, this portrait is made here at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. And it's been our tradition that after a lecture like this, that we present this kind of portrait made here at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, to you, sir. Somebody should have it. This is made in Nigeria and made here at the University of Nigeria by our Department of Fine and Applied Arts. It's purely painting on canvas. Yeah. Again, for the chairman of this lecture, it's also our tradition and have been mandated by staff and students of this university to present this plaque to you, Professor Elochukwu Amochaze, being the chairman of today's lecture, the 63rd Founders Day lecture of the University of Nigeria on this Thursday, 5th October 2023. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Next, we're going to cut the anniversary cake. This is the 3rd anniversary cake of the University of Nigeria. May I invite to join the Vice Chancellor and the guest lecturer and the chairman and the President of the University of Nigeria Alumni Association, Dr. Koro, to come and join the cutting of the cake. The representative of the governor of Enugu State to please come and join the cutting of the cake. And of course, our own First Lady, Dr. Ngozi, please come and join as we cut the anniversary cake. Let's switch for the First Lady. Yes, let me get closer. Put our hands. Okay, to get some divine presence, we also invite our bishop, the Anglican bishop of Sugar Diocese. The Vice Chancellor has requested that you join the party of now that you're here, you just went direct to the bottom of the cake.
I have the privilege to direct the cutting of the cake, and I will request humbly, and the Vice Chancellor will hold the knife, followed by the guest lecturer, and of course, the First Lady, the chairman, supporting with the representative of the executive governor of Enugu State. Yeah, and now permit me to use that name that is above every other name. The name upon which we will build and will be sure it will stand the test of time. I will spell the name and we will all pronounce it loudly. J-E-S-U-S. Jesus.
There's a provision to show a little video trail that tells the story of the University of Nigeria. Looks like it's not working. And what of the picture story? The one that Dr. Honora is to show. Dr. Honora, please come and show that as much as you can. You want to do it from there? Okay. Do you want the microphone? Can somebody pass the microphone to me? Please keep it short. We're out of time.
Thank you very much. I was showing about 30 slides, and I was given about 10 minutes. So
I ask that I stand on the existing protocol. I'm starting from 1958, photograph of 1958. Let me also say here that many of the photographs that I will show here were taken from my father's album. My father was a pioneer student of the Department of Health and Physical Education. He was here in 1961. So some of the photographs survived the Civil War, and he also took some shots and bought some from some photographers that were practicing then. So I give them the credit. So I begin with this one. There were, the history shows that some people came in. Dr. J.W. Cook came, the Vice Chancellor of Exeter University in UK. He visited, and John N. Hanna, President of the Michigan State University, also visited, and our own Glenn Taggart, then the Dean of International Programs in Michigan State University. They visited Nsukka to look at the site. I wouldn't know who is who in this place, but looking at our great Zik pointing to the site as if to say, that is the area. So I found this one very interesting, and I decided to start with it. And this is the list of the first people that were admitted into this university as found in the prospectus. Look at the prospectus. That's my father's own. You can see the signature at the middle. But there it contains the names of the students, the pioneer students of the university. Let me see the next slide. And you see the very first name on the admission list, Abaronye David Urapa Hiemeblem from Umuahia. That's the way they were all listed. Go on. And they were not all taken in October or September in 1960. Another batch came in 1961, and this is the supplementary list. And that is John Marion Johnson, who was appointed the acting principal, as it was called then, and eventually became the substantive vice chancellor in 1961. It was in his name that the GS building, he was named after that GS building, Marion Johnson building. This is our Margaret Egbo refectory, as taken from the hill behind the medical center. It was from there that this shot was taken. And you see at the left side, not Sleso, at the left side you have Bello Hall and Eyoita, the two of them together. At the left, no, go back. At the right is Cover building still under construction. And you look at the thing, you couldn't find any tree there. They were all grass at that moment. I tried to go back to that place to take the shot again, and it wasn't possible because they were now filled with trees and more structures. Next. And this is Faculty of Arts lecture room and lecture hall, as it was called, but it was actually the Act Theater as we know it today, and the Institute of African Studies by the left, but it was Faculty of Arts lecture rooms and lecture hall before it was reconstructed. That was in 1961. It served several functions because in this same hall, the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church had their turns in service every Sunday. They used that place as their first place of worship, and also as performance arena, as could be seen in the next slide. That is Christmas Carols, 1963. Next. Now the same building, and you look towards the right side, and you'll see the current buildings. I think it was then, go back, it was then occupied by Law, College of Law. Go to the next one. And you see the Egbo Ref someone standing at Ekpo Rev and looking straight to the Arts Theatre. You see, the road went straight to that place before this current road was constructed. And you see the absence of trees there. To the left is the social science, current social science faculty. That building, in fact, it was one of the oldest buildings in this university. The very first lecture theater, lecture hall that was built alongside Balewa and Okpara Hall, they were all, the foundation was laid in April 1960. And by October, they had started using that place for lectures. Indeed, the Vice Chancellor and other principal officers were using that same building by 1960. Next slide. Now you see students going to Ekpo Rev to eat. Now it's the Ekpo Convocation Arena, but it used to be Ekpo Rev. So you can make out the age bracket of the students then, and their fashion sense. Now you see the very last building by the left, that is the Harden building, now called Babs Fafunwa building. These were the major three buildings at that angle by 1961. Then the camera pans to the right so that you see those buildings, including the Vice Chancellor's office at the middle and part of the Bello Hall, Ayoita Hall at the right. Next. Now I go back to the residential quarters and you see Fulton Avenue. In fact, those two buildings facing the Faculty of Education. I've tried to go back to that place to take the photographs because that's one of the things I've been doing, going back to those sites to see what they look like today. You can see the Margaret Cartwright, the buildings at Margaret Cartwright at the rear. You can see those story buildings at the rear. Next slide. This is an attempt to take the photograph of that area from the air. Of course, not from the air, from that same hill that I was talking about. And that time, Ikejani Street seemed to be the major street on campus. That is that space at the middle. And you can see the two buildings, two-story building, the two buildings at the right, they are found in Fulton. You will see it in the next slide. Let me see the next slide. Now, that is the place. Now, is a residential, there are residential quarters for lecturers now, but then it used to be the student center. Next. And this is where, when the old Nnamdi Azikiwe Library was under construction, the photographer must have taken the shot, from health and physical education area and facing the back of that building. Next. And that is the finished building from the front. Next. And also the same building looks like they were tarring on the floor of that building, looking at the equipment around. Next. And that is my department, Fine and Applied Arts, Ben Ewanwu College of Arts, as it was then known in 1961. Next. And the students working in the studio in 1962. You can also see the age of the students. They were not that young. And this is the Shawande College of Music, 1961. You could see that they were just finishing the building. The wood and everything that were used to erect the building were still visible. 1961. I wouldn't know the particular site. I think it should be on one of these hills, considering the background, the landscape. You discover that it's not all grass like the rest of the places that we are seeing, but these are students of physics and astronomy doing their thing, using a telescope to look into space. Next. And that is the installation of Nnamdi Azikiwe as the first chancellor of the university. You see the maize bearer looks very much like an Indian. Those days you had people from all parts of the world working here. and Nnamdi Azikiwe is at the middle, while Marion Johnson follows up at the rear. Next. So Nnamdi Azikiwe and Marion Johnson. Yeah, the same ceremony, but you can also see, in addition to those that I've mentioned, you can see K.O. Mbadiwe by the right. This one is interesting. What my father wrote behind this photograph is Rustication Day. So I kept wondering what it was until I now read a couple of books, including a certain text by a pioneer student. And he said that sometime on October 30th, 1962, that there was a demonstration. So this is the first time that the students were sent home as a result of demonstration. Ladies and gentlemen, go back. See the kind of vehicles that took our students back home. Next. And this is the university football team, 1964. I can recognize the fourth person standing from the left, Philip Onwuka from Umuagu Nobi, my father's friend, and I can also see Lawal, fourth from right, standing from Fine and Applied Arts. He was the university striker then. He's now currently a professor of fine art, art history in the United States. Next. These are pioneer graduates of 1963. These are the very first set of graduates, go back. The very first set of graduates, 1963, that was when the first graduation ceremony took place. On June, I think the month of June the 15th or so, 1963. And you can see the chancellor and the vice chancellor at the middle. It's interesting to have an entire graduating student in one frame. And these are 7 of the 11 pioneer students, female graduates. And you have on that list Miss Okereke, Miss Modo, Miss Okonkwo, Miss Onwuteka, Miss Egwon, Miss Elemo, and Miss Iyama. Now, the first set of people that received honorary degrees in this university, and that was on the 15th day of June, 1963. You'll see the Reverend Joseph Oladipo Shorem Meku, Doctor of Divinity, is the President of the Methodist Church, Nigeria. Sir Louis Mbanefo, received the Doctor of Laws, and he was the Chief Judge of Eastern Nigeria, and also sat at the bench in World Court at that period. Sir Louis Odumegwu Ojukwu, the Ikemba Mnewi's father, he was then the chairman, Chamber of Commerce, Nigeria, and he received Doctor of Laws. Then His Grace C.J. Patterson, who was the Archbishop of Niger Diocese, Doctor of Divinity. Then Thomas Ekundayo Phillips, a celebrated organist and songwriter, he received the honor Doctor of Music. Then we have Honorable Sir Samuel Layinka, Doctor of Medicine. Then we have at the rear, Sir Ahmed Bello, the Premier of Northern Nigeria. Next slide. And this is the procession of the 1964 graduating students at the Francis, then it was Francis Ibiam Stadium, but now it's known as Akano Ibiam Stadium. And you see how glorious the celebration was. Next. So, out of about 150 photographs that I have at the moment, I decided to show these ones to give ourselves some peep into the past. And here I read that we must continue to follow the direction of the great Zik of Africa to restore the dignity of man. Thank you.
Wasn't it?
Well, it was worth the trouble. Dr. Honora, thank you so very much. I think the university should. Professor Shijoke, you didn't tell me. Oh, but it's okay. Congratulations, my good friend. Thank you for preserving those photographs. They are worth more than their weight in gold. There's no doubt. I saw the registrar smiling. They'll probably be talking to you about paying and owning it, right? There's a little clip that will take 1 minute. It tells our story in a different way on a day like this. But so in a minute, the chairman will give his closing remarks or go up the stage. But let's see that video. It will take just 1 minute of your time. Senior ceremonials, I think it's time to also offer some refreshment here. But don't make it rowdy. His Excellency is still here, and his minders will be worried if we get rowdy. But let's see what that video tells us. Can you move that leg to this leg? This one should move. Thank you very much. Why is the Vice Chancellor's photo not there? Let's take the chairman's closing remarks.
Our distinguished lecturer, the Vice Chancellor, members of the University Cabinet, and of course the Enugu, we thank all of you for being here. Professor Ndeli is gone. Significant. It's very interesting. I know, of course, when they were graduating, I was already a graduate. But that was at UCI, not at UI. And I had to, when we had to run away, of course, I had to take refuge to this place. We thank all of you for your presence. The students and staff of this university, we've been here for years. It's very significant. I feel really excited. Only a few of us, the old generation, only a few of us are here. That's very refreshing. We've had the plea from our lecturer. I'm sure they are going to listen to us. We're looking forward to your activities. I've already talked about OWASA. We do monitor. I will report to Professor Mwabeze. Thank all of you, students there. We used to be here. Teaching you on Saturdays on socialism.
All the boxes. Sometimes it's not possible, but on a day like this, it's actually made it so possible. And when you get the guest lecturer, you begin to think about him if it's a chairman. But on this occasion, we got the guest lecturer, and let me reveal this. He suggested somebody that would be of went in search of that chairman. And he said, oh, sure, I will come. And we met for the first time today. So he accepted to come without even meeting with me. His Excellency accepted to come without even a phone call from the Vice Chancellor. His Excellency, we thank you most profoundly for this honor that you've done to the University of Nigeria. We don't take it for granted in any way. It's been a pleasure. Like you heard, you were invited by popular demand. Everybody wanted a bit of you, and you have not disappointed in everything. We heard about the miracles. We heard about the miracles taking place in Abia State. But again, that is a prayer answered. Now, as you leave with your team, please go with you our best wishes for the future. And when we do call again, for whatever reason, please see us again. The Vice Chancellor, with your permission, can I call for the national anthem? So, His Excellency, we don't live without one. So, thank you everyone who has come. You've made this a perfect 63rd Founders Day ceremony. Before you leave, remember there is the Dignity of Man lecture tomorrow, where Professor Frank Ndele will receive an award from the Alumni Association. I've been asked to also announce that Frank Ndele will be 89 years old tomorrow. So that is going to get an award on his birthday. So you may be here to sing the happy birthday song for him. The music department band, the national anthem, please. Thank you very much. A little announcement. The Vice Chancellor has requested that all the guests, special guests from out of town, and then members of the Governing Council, the principal officers of the university, deans, members of the University Senate, senior academics, and administrators come to the Vice Chancellor's lounge for lunch, while the rest of us will be served lunch at the UBA Hall of Fame. And so while you're standing, the Vice Chancellor's procession will leave. Please stay standing while the Vice Chancellor's procession will leave.